Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and this afternoon, it is Tuesday. It's the big week of the big game, and I'm joined by Liam Carrigan all the way from Japan. Liam, you've been off for a few weeks. How are you, pal?
I'm good. Good to be back. I'll just say this quickly. My mum passed away last month, and I was back in Scotland making sure everybody was okay and looking after the funeral and whatever. And I just want to say thank you, friends, family, everybody who's been in touch to make sure we're okay. Dad's doing well, all things considered, and thank you, everybody, for all your support.
No, honestly, Liam, you've been in my thoughts over the last few weeks, mate, and I just hope you and the family are okay at this time. So thank you for joining us again. And you've joined us at a time whereby it's been an up and down season. You know, you could jump back a couple of months and the mood was different. And people talk about this holy trinity that Brendan Rodgers started talking about in his first time at the club, I guess, of pulling everything together and pulling everybody together to make sure that we are this unstoppable force that Brendan talks about. And there was a sense at the weekend that it all did start to come together. You could feel it, you could hear it in the ground, the performance on the park. And it seems natural when it's there, Liam, but see when it's not there and something's missing, it's difficult to put your finger on it, isn't it?
You know, it's funny you say that. That's the exact phrase my dad used at the weekend when I was talking to him about this. He said, it's all coming together at just the right time, just when it needs to. And yeah, you know, we'll look back on this and say it's not been a great season, but you know what? See if we end up winning this league in a few years' time, nobody's going to care.
No, because all the nuances of that, the bad performances, the situation after a game where they've gone up for their acclaim and they've been met by boos, the players and the staff, all that kind of stuff is a footnote if you win the league. It absolutely is. We're going to be joined by the one, the only, the punk poet, the podcasting poet. It's Kevin Graham. There you are. Fashionably late, Kev.
Oh, sorry.
We couldn't wait on you because we would have got a few moans in the comment section. So we had to start without you, my friend. How are you feeling this week? It's a week-on-week thing. I keep asking you about your Brendan-ometer. Where is it this week, Kev?
I haven't really thought about my Brendan-ometer this week. I've had a wee bit of a heat call for Friday, so I'm trying to get over it. So if my voice goes halfway through this, then that'll be a pleasure for all the listeners. If my voice goes all squeaky and rough and stuff like that. My Brendan-ometer, look, Brendan-ometer is I'm having a wee bit of fun with him this week. He seems to be getting up the right folks' noses for saying things that he's. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't. I mean, I heard the fun comment and I took it for what it was meant. Jock Stein had a famous quote. He says, "You wear your boiler suit when you get to the cup final, and you put your suit on for the cup final, and you go and have fun." I took that quote as being that. And when you read it in the context and you go, well, that's what he was kind of meaning. And it's caused all sort of outrage and uprage, and they're trying to create a bit of needle, isn't it?
Yes.
For something that's no there. And if you are of a Rangers persuasion and you need to create needle for going into a game to basically save your league title or your potential league title, then you shouldn't be there, eh? You shouldn't need that sort of you shouldn't need to create a sort of beef for that motivation, because what Rodgers says wasn't
antagonistic, was it?
No, it wasn't antagonistic at all, eh? It wasn't at all, eh? But that's it, eh? I didn't ken. Aye, Saturday was good. Saturday was really, really good.
Did you feel things coming together? Liam and I were just talking about that. Liam's old fella said to him, it feels like everything's coming together at the right time, Kev. Did you get that vibe in the stadium?
Yes. There was the Holy Trinity was back as one, which has been the first time possibly this season that everything, there was a big massive positive energy. I didn't want to sound like a hippie, but there was a positive energy even right for the start of the game. Even
anger is an energy, and you know, John Lydon wasn't a hippie, was he?
even when we weren't playing well, and we didn't play well for the first 25 minutes, and let's no kid ourselves on there. We didn't play well for the first 25 minutes, and we ended up 2-0 up. And that always helps. The early goal always helps as well. But there seems to be a better energy in the stadium. Even before the game, it was almost as if, right, let's get this one our way, and everything else will take care of itself, which is not the way football works, obviously, but there just seemed to be that wee bit of it was a different vibe whatsoever during the game, and everything just seemed to be all pulling in the same direction now.
Well, Kev's talking about energy. I don't think it's hippie at all, Kev. I think it's what makes the world go round, because if you imagine we didn't get that result, it's all about the energy and the buoyancy within the Rangers dressing room the following day, isn't it, Liam? I mean, that's how a title race works. It's about, people talk about momentum swings. Momentum is in essence, it's the energy within a room. It's the positivity, it's or otherwise. And I feel at this stage, right, and we've been saying it all season, and in particular in the last few months, about taking care of business, looking after your own backyards. We're dragging out all the cliches here, Liam. But what then happens is you can have unity in your camp, and I think we've got it. We've definitely got it. And you can have mutiny in another camp. And I was looking at that footage last night. A few people sent me the TikTok videos. Was it Barisic and Butland falling out with the Rangers fans? And, you know, this frustration and the energy or the negativity or the anxiety, whatever it may be, seems to be filtering in to that kind of behaviour, to Clement when he's talking post-match and getting asked, as Kev says, they're throwing him the grenade, aren't they? And he's pulling the pin out, isn't he? Or the punter, the actual person interviewing him is pulling the pin out and throwing it to him. But he's getting uptight about it. The players seem to be getting uptight about it, but we seem a wee bit more natural when we're in a good rhythm at the moment, Liam.
I think the fact that we won, and won as convincingly as we did on Saturday, I think the penny's finally dropped for most honest Rangers supporters, is that even if they do win next weekend, we're probably still going to win the league. You know, I hope it doesn't come down to that, but even if we don't win this game at the weekend, we're still favourites for the title. And they celebrated that draw last month like a victory. And I think they're all just feeling a wee bit stupid right now because they jumped the gun there. I mean, they were still in command of the title race at that point, but It was not a done deal. And now you see what I think is just the manifestation of that frustration. They're taking it out on their own players. They're taking it out on each other because they don't have anything to hit us with, because we just sat back and said, well, let the football do the talking, and it has.
The big thing for me in that game, the celebrations were akin to someone who had won a pivotal match and it had kind of set them on their way. Brendan Rodgers, after the game, even spoke about the effect of losing that game. And even then, we spoke yesterday about mind games. I think Brendan Rodgers is an absolute master at it. I really do. Even that, the comments after that game, the comments around James Forrest being the best winger at the club prior to him coming back into the side, the comments about having fun at the weekend, I don't think were antagonistic whatsoever. The comments that he made regarding the amount of managers that Rangers were coming and he'd seen off all these managers. Kev, I seen that more as a dig at the narrative being created by the media, actually. The Rangers are coming stuff. I think that was a dig at the media. I haven't heard Brendan being disrespectful, because that's the word that's getting used at the moment, Kev. I've not heard Brendan being disrespectful about Rangers this season.
No, at any time where he's had a wee bit of a go, and it's been the narrative has shifted with those who don't operate in good faith when it comes to Celtic, when they've got papers and that to sell, and they've tried to make it as a dig at Rangers. And I'm glad, no, Brendan's actually having a dig at you here.
Yeah,
he's had quite a few digs at the mainstream media and press conferences, and they've tried to spin it round and go, no, he's having a dig at Clement, he's having a dig at Rangers. I go, no, really. He's having a dig at the Scottish game. He's having a dig at the nature of the Scottish press. It was like when, what was his name, Neil Warnock came up here, and they asked Brendan, what do you think of Neil coming up here? He says, he's always wanted to he's always wanted to manage up here. Just wait till he sees how it's referees and how you guys treat him.
That's right. Yep.
And you're like, oh, that's a wee bit of like, I give him a couple of weeks until he learns the ropes, then he'll see it's not as fun as what he actually thinks it is because of you guys, because of the referees, because of the way the game's run up here. And I went, that's a wee bit of a dig, but it's not a dig at Rangers, it's a dig at the wider Scottish game. And it was the same with I've had 5 Rangers managers, blah blah blah. That was construed as a dig at Rangers when you actually looked at the whole context. It was a dig at the media, as if they go, I've heard this before.
Aye, you've asked me this question time and time again. You've told me they're coming. Yeah,
you've asked me this question time and time again, and I just need to point at the facts. My facts didn't lie. So that's fair it is. But they're desperate, eh? They're utterly desperate up here. It's a sad state of affairs. I didn't want to really have a go at the media, but you're going to need to have a go at the media because, as I said last week when I was on, I've had the unfortunate pleasure of seeing quite a few back pages over the last 5 weeks as my dad's been in hospital. And it is so blatantly obvious what they're trying to do.
What about the Giakoumakis one, Kev? The latest one. I was part of that podcast. I gave an interview for that podcast. And they had told me, we've actually got an interview with Giakoumakis. So I had a bit of an insight into where it was being pitched. And it certainly was not an anti-Celtic episode. And the interview with Giakoumakis was not an anti-Celtic interview. Absolutely not. And I was just waiting for that one to drop because I gave him an interview a few weeks back. I've not actually listened to it all the way through in an edited format, but obviously I know what the vibe is and what they were trying to put across. And there's absolutely no way that Giakoumakis was making Celtic out to be the villains there, Kev. However, if you were to read the headlines, you would think that he was.
It's utterly desperate situations for them. And this is the problem with them, eh? No, remember in the Halcyon days, probably when Liam worked there and stuff like that in the 80s, and that's where you go.
Liam's not that old, mate. Liam's not that old.
You got your news for. This is where you got your news for. And even in the early 90s, we've got to thank the mainstream media because they tell us what was going on at Celtic. They didn't hide anything. They were because they were lapping up at the fact that we could have went bust, we could have went out of business. But now the mainstream media have moved into the orbit of fan media. Instead of being better in fan media, they just want to be fan media because that's what gives them clicks. And that's, for me, that's what makes them, that's what discredits them. If you went to journalism school for 4 years or whatever it is, you should be far better than some wee numpty with 3 fingers that can type a word. You should be better than that. And the fact is they've moved into this fear.
No, they've got more than 3 fingers. They might just use 3 because that's me. I use sometimes 4, sometimes my thumb comes into it. But it's the use of the 3 fingers, isn't it? Rather than just having the 3.
They've dumbed down massively, and they get shown, and it gets shown up in weeks like this. The fact that they have dumbed down massively.
Well, what's going to happen? I'm going to bring Liam in because Liam does have a journalistic background in terms of your career, Liam. Right? The way I see it going, I'm always, every single day working on Acsom, which is a form of media, and I see there being a point in the very near future where it's just media. People won't talk about mainstream, alternative, renegades, whatever. It'll just be media, good and bad, right? But the way I can see the kind of news, topical stuff going, because there's no opinion-based kind of research or summary in these pieces, Liam, both mainstream and alternative, as we sit here. I can see that being completely generated by AI as it happens. And it's, you might have an editor. As AI gets better, you might not need an editor. So that actually is going to take away from these mad headlines that when you actually reach into the text of the piece, the headline doesn't match the article and the theme of the article. But that kind of thing, if the mainstream thinks that's what's going to save it, coming along and almost pretending to be fan media, as some of them have done, right? They're going to be in for a shock because very quickly AI is going to take over all that kind of stuff. And then where will they be? They won't have a platform unless they're ahead of the curve.
Well, the thing is with the media right now in Scotland, just to put it into perspective, right? I was a copy boy at the Herald when I was 16, which was 2000 to 2001, right?
He had you working for the Herald in 1983.
It must be the baldy heat. I'm older than I look, but sorry, I look older than I am. Sorry, but when I was at the Herald, I remember a very important lesson that my mentor, the deputy editor at the time, Kevin McKenna, said to me. He said, "Good journalism is you write the story, and then a sub-editor will stick a headline on it." But he said remember, this was 20 years ago, right? 25 years ago nearly. He was saying the problem with media now is a lot of people write the headline first and then try and make a story to fit the narrative.
Yes.
And that is exactly what's going on with so much of the stuff you read in the papers about Celtic now. And take the Herald as an example, right? Back then, I remember the new editor who had just come in when I started, Mark Douglas Hume, the former Prime Minister's nephew. Nice guy, but obviously a Tory, whatever. He was quite happy about the fact that the Herald was recording 300,000 circulation at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's now about a tenth of that. I believe it's under 30,000 now. And that's in less than 25 years. It has dropped to a tenth of what it was. So, another thing that Kevin McKenna said to me was, print media is dead. Get a job somewhere else. And that was before I even went to university. So,
big shout out to Kevin. Kevin's a great writer, a phenomenal Celtic brain. He edited the Celtic Opus. Remember that big book that was like the size of that shelving system behind me? It was huge, and it was like £1,967 to buy it. You remember that book? And it was in a limited edition. There's one of them at Celtic Park. He edited that thing. There's about 1,000 pages in it. Unbelievable. And then he edited the Quality Street Gang, and that's how I got to know Kevin a wee bit. But a brilliant voice, a great commentator on politics and also football. I still enjoy reading his literature to this day. And there's one thing as well, Liam. He's very balanced. If he thinks Celtic are in the wrong, he'll give them a wee kick in as well, won't he?
Aye, I mean that's the difference between like the sort of the out and out Celtic fans in the media and the Rangers fans in the media. You've got Chris Sutton as a great example. Former player, Celtic fan, does not pretend to be anything else, but he will criticise us when he thinks it's warranted. Whereas you get Chris Boyd, who is just a sycophant, and he will not go against the party line, no matter how obvious it is that the Ibrox ship is sinking.
Right. No, you're spot on. I mean, we've opened up with the media side of things, Kev. My take on it is that media is going to thrive. Media is going to thrive, but it's going to thrive in a different way. And the print side of things, that will still exist, but not in its current format. AI is going to take over your news because there's no opinion, there's no theme, there's no nothing, there's no summary. It's just, this has happened. Willie Collum's a referee against Rangers. There's the story. 50 different, articles are written furiously to try and get the story out there first, and it's just all the same information. So that's all going to change, Kev. You were talking as well, Kevin, about how the media reported on Celtic's demise back in the late 80s and early 90s in terms of the financial aspect of it. I'm going to say that, for me anyway, it was the fanzine movement. It was the fans that were educating the fans back then, for me. Obviously, Rangers tried the records, what's the difference? Tried the sensationalism of putting a hearse up at Celtic Park to say that the club was going to die and all that. Whereas years before that happened, Not Review was talking about what we need to do. People were stabilising within the Celtic support. Jim Orr was an activist. He doesn't like getting called that, but he was. He was an activist. He got a group together. Matt McGlone and Brendan Sweeney, they got a group together. So I think the fans were really ahead of the curve back then, Kevin. I actually believe that they still are.
Yes, nowadays it's more important that the fans are ahead of the curve because the media doesn't tell us the truth. The media are basically PR companies for products or whatever else they're advertising at that point, or for whoever their paymasters tell them that they need to beef up, back up, or things like that. They're copy. They just get told what to write. They write it, change a couple of words, and they bang it out there. The fan media is more important now. Good fan media. There is some who are just a copy and paste brigade. But if you get good opinion, the only places that you get opinion pieces now are on fan media. You don't really get that in the mainstream media. There is a difference. There is a Liam mentioned Chris Boyd there, and Chris Sutton's maybe guilty of this. There's a dumbing down of the pundit as well, and I blame things like Arsenal TV and DR Sports and stuff like that, where it's sensationalists. Where you've even got Sky Sports with Carragher and Neville and that, who are doing the Manx-Scouse rivalry live on air as if they are fan media.
Mind I got the wee behind the curtain look at that, Kev. It was the Hamilton game. Remember away? It was Edward's debut. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And we were.
I wasn't there, but I remember you telling me.
So we got invited to that, and I seen them setting things up before going live. You know, and that was interesting for me because, to be fair, the needle on screen often looks genuine, right? But they're discussing doing it before going live. I'll say this. That will be your take, and it'll erupt. And instead of it being a genuine debate, Kev, it's something that's actually, it's like caricatures of themselves on screen. It's
like WWE, ain't it?
Yeah.
I mean, if you ever listen to a certain English radio station which calls itself something it's called Talk Sport, you can tell those presenters are set up like you're saying that. It doesn't matter what your conviction is. You've got to actually set this up, and it's been a dumb down. I mean, I was at Fir Park, and should Chris Boyd be dancing about the commentary box when Motherwell go 1-0 up?
No.
Should he be right next to the Celtic away support? Should he be giving the Celtic away support the big one when Motherwell go 1-0 up? No, wait a minute. You're there to do a professional job. Meant to be doing a professional job. I never saw Charlie Mulgrew and that going mental when Celtic went 2-1 up in the final win. Charlie Mulgrew and that are sitting next to them. They're there to do a job. And look, the media is what it is, fan media. They're now in this, you're right, Paul, media is now just media. It's just that some folk do it full time and some folk do it as a hobby, because everyone is now doing the exact same stuff, and it doesn't matter what your budget is. Like, you've got things like PLZ who have got guys who have got big hitters on it, but they're still doing the same as what we are doing, sitting here talking about the game. It's no different, apart from they've got a couple of ex-managers and Alan Ruff.
The thing with that, Kev, it'll come down to the point, and obviously things are happening in the world of Acsom. I'll tell you a wee bit more about that as the show progresses. But it'll get to the point where everything levels off and you've got 70 versions of the same thing. And then it comes down to whether or not the people actually warm or resonate, with the audience, the people that are on the show. If you don't like them, you won't watch it. And I'm not slagging things like PLZ and all of that. I'm just trying to point out to folk that the mainstream media is shouldn't be called the mainstream media anymore. It's just the media. And everybody's doing the exact same. And when you look at it, why are they saying these things? Never trust anybody that's saying something that's in good faith. So the Daily Record will say something which is not in good faith to Celtic fans because they need to get a click. And it's the same way certain Celtic blogs and that, they'll say something that's not in good faith to Rangers because they need the clicks, they need something going. And folk need to actually realise that it's all just a big game. But you find what's good and you keep with it. You find what resonates with you, Kev. I'm the same as a consumer. We've all got certain things that we subscribe to on YouTube, and it's because the people that are presenting it, you believe them, you think they're balanced, you actually warm to them, and that's what it's going to come down to in terms of the media. But
then he believe now that your Sky Sports, your Talk Sports, your Daily Record, that your other papers that do online content of that are going to be held to a higher standard than the Celtic, any other Celtic blogs or anything like that, because they're no anymore. They're not of that. Do not expect a higher standard of those who used to have a higher standard in the 70s and 80s when they had 700,000 circulations. They're no longer there. They're just jumped up versions of the wee guy sitting in his bedroom.
The thing I would say at the end of that, Kev, is say your working day was to end in 2 hours' time and you hadn't reached your target clicks, you will produce something. I'm not saying Acsom does because we do our own thing, but if you're someone with a big budget and loads of people that are working for you, etc., and you need to meet your targets every day, they will write something sensational. And often in this country, the sensationalism is against Celtic, because if they do it against Rangers, they'll be boycotted. They'll be boycotted. If you do it against Celtic, we're likely to click on it, disagree with it, share it and say, look at this, because the Giakoumakis thing, for me, was ridiculous, because obviously I did a slight insight into the production and what they were trying to achieve with that show. And then I started reading the headlines and I thought, that's not what's happened at all. But that's where we are. We want to talk about the game. I was up at Celtic Park this morning, met a couple of people. It was always brilliant. It didn't happen on a Monday because it was a bank holiday. So instead, last night we put out the edited version of the Pierre Van Hooijdonk, George Cadet and John Collins interview. And as expected, and this is fair enough, I think, plenty of Celtic fans have come on and criticised 2 or even 3 of those players. And that's fair enough. But I think in terms of their story, they're part of Celtic's history. Go on and listen to it. They give you a different take on what was reported at the time as well. So it's interesting now. Before I go any further, Liam, there's a lot of talk about new Celtic jerseys, Adidas deals and all that. Tell us, what is this that you're wearing today? Is it purple? Magenta?
It is purple. It's not blue and white. Don't worry. It is purple. It's maybe not coming across on my camera, but this is Boreali FC, which is an Italian 4th division team, I think. And you probably can't see it very well, but the print here depicts the Battle of Milvian Bridge.
All right.
If you know your Roman history, that was when Emperor Constantine became Rome's first Christian emperor. And in a completely unrelated scope, he enjoyed a few battles and a few victories over Huns in his time. I'm just saying.
Yeah, well, listen, it's historical fact, Liam. You're allowed to discuss that. Absolutely no problem with that.
Liam, just to go off on a tangent, have you seen the FC Como top?
Not yet, no.
Have a look at it. They could be getting promoted into Serie A.
All right.
Their stadium's right on a lake, right? And the top is cracking. I think they were one away from getting promoted into Serie A. We don't know if they'll actually get up because of the nick of their statuesque value of the stadium. They should actually just be allowed up, and their top is cracking.
What about then, right, very quickly, on the subject of jerseys, you know that it's a subject I am very fond of. Very quickly, before we get into the Derby chat, what do you make of what is pretty much definitely the new Celtic top? I think it was in a Japanese shop, was it not, Liam, that it was leaked?
It was Thailand, but
Thailand, right? Aye. So, yeah, what's your thought? I'll start with you, Liam. I know you're an aficionado of the Celtic jersey. What's your take on it?
I really like the collar, the kind of a Celtic theme it's got going on.
Yes.
I'm not into the side vents, but what I will say is that I recently got the new Scotland top, and that has the same template. That's got yellow vents in the side. And I'm a bigger guy, and I thought this isn't particularly fat guy friendly, but actually once you've got it on, it's fine. It's barely, the side vents do not break up the top the way it looks when it's laid out flat.
That's what I was going to ask. That's what I was going to ask.
The next day, there was a photo uploaded of somebody in Thailand actually wearing the shirt, and it looks a hell of a lot better when someone's wearing it. I like the hoops. I like the colour scheme. I like that it's a lot simpler than what we've got this season. I still wish that the hoops were completely unbroken, but it's all right. I won't be paying 75 quid for it, but I'll tell you, I will source it from some other totally legal means, but I am not paying that much for it. But I think it's a nice top.
Of course. Well, you're talking about colour schemes. Obviously, we've used yellow, silver, and black in recent times. They've gone for the dark green, even the star above the crest, dark green. I was going to ask about these vents, if that's what they refer to. The footballer of today, Kev, you'll not even see them. because they're that slim and the jerseys are so tight fitting. But yeah, it looks good for me. I'm just glad we got back to the proper hoops without the crocodile design or whatever that was meant to be.
Turtle design.
Turtle, yeah.
Turtle, I say the
Some
turtle.
kind of reptilian design.
Yes. Aye, it looks very 2001, 2002. Martin O'Neill. Very 2001, 2002. Martin O'Neill, ain't it? The new one. I like it. I think what actually happens to me, I get hooked blind. By the time we get to this point in the season, I just see green and white hoops. It doesn't matter the variation there. It's just by the time I get to this point, it's a team out there wearing green and white hoops. It doesn't matter if it's got reptile designs on the way through it or stuff like that, or it's got a yellow on the collar, black on the collar. It's just green and white by this point. It's just
by this point in life, with my eyesight, Kev, whenever I'm watching a game of football, it's just green and white because you can't make out the detail in any case. Pete McGee, good to see you, pal. What a classic jersey that was, by the way, that you're wearing. You are commenting on the YouTube. The team picks itself, says Pete. No need for speculation this time round. I get that. I think the only speculative position perhaps would be if May does fit and who drops out. Now, in my mind, Liam, it's an obvious choice. You stick with Forrest because he's an on-form winger, which is something we've not always had this season. He's played in so many of these games and come through the other end as the victor. He's done the business against them at Celtic Park. Flip it onto the other wing. Kuhn, no writing him off. I'm putting Kuhn in the same bracket as Nawrocki and Palmer. I don't think they have shown anything that I would say they're not for me, but I do think a pre-season and then, working more with new players coming in would benefit them for next term. However, I don't think he's shown the best form, Liam Kuhn. And I think if Maeda comes back, that's a no-brainer. And you play him on the left and Forrest on the right. The rest of the team, as far as I'm concerned, and like Pete says, it's a team that played against Hearts at the weekend. What's your take on it, Liam?
No, I agree. Forrest is undroppable at the moment. Kuhn has not been that bad, but I wouldn't say he was undroppable. And so if you have to drop one of the wingers to accommodate Maeda, assuming that he's fit, then it's Kuhn. He's not done anything wrong, but when you come into a team like Celtic, just playing well enough isn't really adequate. You have to be exceptional. And Forrest has been exceptional the last few weeks. Kuhn's done all right. So not writing him off at all. I think he'll still go on to be a very good contributor, but for the time being, it's Maeda and Forrest for me.
Right, I'm 100% on that train of thought. What about yourself, Kev? I mean, do you disagree? And what's your take on, as I say, I mean, people might also say Yang deserves a wee bit more time. I've got a wee list here that we're going to be talking about in terms of the summer. And I think Yang is a player that needs to be loaned out for a spell. I think that the rigours of Scottish football has probably taken him by surprise. He's not had the transition that's been as simple as some of the other players. And in fact, I think O's transition into the Scottish game was quite, for me, it was quite flawless. He's fallen out of favour, unfortunately. But the three guys that I think next season could come to fruition are Palmer, Kuhn and Nawrocki from the business we've done this year. However, in terms of the starting 11, it's the same against that we played against Hearts, Kev, but we drop Kuhn if Maeda's fit.
I think it all depends on the fitness of Maeda. I mean, he looked fine when he came on for his 25 minutes spell. It's quite weird, because you look at that team on Saturday and there was only one new signing in it, and that would have been Kuhn. Would I be right in saying for this year?
And no summer signings, Kevin.
No summer signings. Rodgers backs Kuhn more than he backs other wingers because he maybe had a bit more input in him joining the club. If Maeda's, Jamesy Forrest has just shown the wingers how it's done, Jamesy Forrest has just come on and gone, this is what you do, and this is what you do when you're a Celtic winger. And I don't think Kuhn was bad at the weekend, but wingers will have good games and bad games, and actually like some games where they're no really involved. And I think Kuhn had one of the games at the weekend where everything was on the other side, and that I do agree with you. everybody's actually looking to say, oh, there'll be a massive clear out and there's got to be 8 or 9 players coming in. But I think we've got to look at some of the signings that we've had this year, having a year, 6 months to settle, and then we'll either go up a gear or we'll be absolutely fine and we'll find our feet next year. You look at Palmer's stats, you probably say there could be a player in there, and that probably gives them another chance. The fact is, Kuhn's only been here for 6 months. Not even 6 months yet, and he's played so many games, probably says the manager trusts him as well. At the weekend, you've got to go with your 2 best players, your 2 most experienced players, which is Maeda and Forrest.
I thought you were going to say Tavernier there.
Well, he has an experience. He's experienced at being disappointed, isn't he? So we may as well keep that going. I can see it. Maybe it'll cause a wee bit of difference in shape and the way that Rodgers wants the wingers to play. But if Maeda's fit, that he's got to play. But then with Maeda, we've got to put up with the rough with the smooth. We have, but he is. He reminds me. No, remember that season? Samaras was absolutely superb in Europe and superb in the Rangers games.
See Samaras' name. It's always going to come in when we're talking about Maeda, isn't it? It really is.
And Samaras that season, Rangers couldn't touch him, and he wasn't touched in the Champions League. Any time he was on that pitch, he just ran riot. And Maeda's got that just sort of aura about him at this moment in these games that it's even like some of the memes in that you're seeing, like when Tavernier missed that penalty, you're like, did Maeda run on the park, whisper in his ear and run away, and it just actually freaked him out and nobody saw him, he was that quick, So there's got to be a wee bit of mind games coming there, but I look at experience. We're trying to get over the line here, and Maeda and James Forrest are the 2 best wingers that we've got in the club at the moment. And you're maybe only going to get 60 minutes out of Maeda and also Forrest, So I would start with A2.
No, definitely. And by the way, I am reluctant to write players off and all the rest of it. I really am. But the thing that we're going to talk about near the end of the show is in relation to what happens in the summer. Because, depending on how the last few games goes in this campaign, we could be in a hugely strong position, the strongest position financially we've ever been in, Liam. We spoke about it the other week, and I know some of these figures are approximations on the back of a fag packet and all that. I get it. But, you've got the Abada money coming in, you've got Frimpong, Sell-On, obviously the season tickets, all that cash coming in, Champions League potentially coming in, and also the money that's already there. We're going to be in a situation where we can spend, but we need to spend a lot more smartly, I think, than we have done in previous seasons. So that's going to be a conversation. I'm going to give you my take on who I think is going to leave the club or should. And this is from a football fan's perspective, Liam. This is what we talk about, on supporters' buses and boozers. We've done it, from the beginning of time. So it's no disrespect. But generally speaking, I go to the guys that are not contributing to the football club and to the starting 11 or the wider group. That 17 or 18 players that Rodgers seems to trust. And then you've got a big clutch of players outside that bubble, haven't you? And they're all on decent wages. Some of them are on big wages. And it's just about, looking at it and saying, well, who's going to survive the cull? Now, Kevin made a very good point. Only 1 new signing started there at the weekend. And no new signings from the summer transfer recruitment started the game. And I think that over the piece, even Brendan Rodgers has mentioned it, he's given game time to the likes of Yang and Palmer. Tillio's even got some games before he went back to Australia. Before he came round to the realisation, I'm going to have to run with the people that know how to win this game, how to get us over the line. And then we've reverted back to the likes of James Forrest. And I think he's now got that small group of players, Liam, that he trusts. And there's a unity within that. Now, it must be difficult, though, to keep all those other guys who's on the outside of that kind of inner sanctum happy. That must be a difficult task for the gaffer.
There's going to have to be a lot of players going out on loan or a lot of players getting freed in the summer, whatever happens. I agree with you. I think Yang, there's a player there. Get him on loan, preferably to either another Scottish team or an English Championship team, to see if he's got the physical requirements. I would say the same for Kwon. He has, by all accounts, done very well at St Mirren up until he got injured. And O is another one that I think we can't quite write off yet. But if we sign another striker in the summer, as I think we will, it's probably ta-ta time for O, unfortunately, which is a shame because I really do think there's a player there. McCarthy should have gone already. Not his fault. If I was getting the money he was, I'd be quite happy to sit in my bum all day as well. There's like you say, there's several players on the fringes who will probably go on to be very successful with other clubs, but I just don't think it will be at Celtic. Unfortunately, I think Mikey Johnson's another one. He will end up doing very well somewhere, but I don't think it will be Celtic.
No, and by the way, I think he's done really, really well. And obviously, they managed to claw themselves above Norwich. He does parent club, so we'll see how that goes. Now, Kev, you're the poet. You are the poet on this show. Patrick Docherty's written a wee bit of poetry. You're going to have to recite it. You are the poet. So there you go. There's a poem for you, starting with the word "doon." Patrick Docherty has written it. Go for it.
Down the line a train came puffing, Celtic 7, Rangers nothing. That's
nice. One day, says Uncle Nobby Steamboat, we'll have an AI presenter on Acsom. What I'll say to you, maybe you already do. Have you ever met some of the guys or girls on this show? Maybe you already do. Stephen Kennedy, my predicted lineup is Hart, Johnston, Carter Vickers, Scales and Taylor, McGregor, Hatate, O'Reilly, Forrest, Maida, Kugel. Stephen, I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. If, as Kev says, Maida is 100% fit, that's the team that I would start with as well. So, Scots, allow me to bang on with another Joe Hart appreciation post. Oh no, so glad he's shown his qualities I always knew he had. Great to see. Kev, you actually said something, and Brendan Rodgers said it after the game, that we didn't have that rhythm at the beginning. Hearts came out, fair play. They came out to give us a game. They were winning corners. They were putting us under pressure. Throughout the game, though, Joe Hart, once again, Kev, for me, showed just how important he's been this season. And if we are to have a successful season, we'll look back on Hart's contribution, because he's been brilliant, isn't he? Some of the big saves.
It's not just the big saves. He's actually made the last couple of weeks a bit entertaining, because he's breathing everything in. He's living every moment as if it is his last moments in football. He knows this is it, and he's the fight at the final whistle when they're doing the Lappy appreciation, and he's just standing there looking at the Green Brigade. He's just standing there, and they're doing the "Don't worry, be happy," and he just starts jumping up and down for like just with them, and you can tell that he's absolutely loving it. When Matt O'Reilly was taking the penalty as well, he was down leaning against his goalpost on his knees, and when Matt O'Reilly scored, you could see him looking up to the heavens as if to go, right, that's another one ticked off, that's it, done. Like, he's made look, I said at the start of the season that we had to look for a Joe Hart replacement, basically done because of what's happening. He was in his last year of his contract. The chances were he wasn't going to sign another contract because of his age and because his age and stage of his career. I didn't think he was going to retire. I thought he might have moved back down to England or somewhere like that. And we're still in that situation. That's going to happen in the summer, but that's a story that is for the summer. If we get across the line and we win this league, I'll remember it more for Joe Hart more than anybody else. Just because what he's, and I'm not just talking about his performances, I'm talking about the character that he's shown in the last 4 or 5 weeks. And I said to him maybe about 2 months ago, Paul, when I was very, very doom and gloom. And I was very, very doom and gloom, which is highly unusual for me. And I says we needed mentality monsters. And I think we've seen that now with the team selections, that Rodgers knows who he can trust. And Joe Hart is a massive, massive part of that mentality monster. That is he eats it up. He knows what needs to be done, and he's absolutely loving it. But and you can actually see that, and that's coming out. The way he's acting on the pitch, his performances on the pitch as well, and even his performances in the media, and like that night with Joe Hart when he's talking about just how much he's actually fell in love with the club.
Mm-hmm.
He's a mentality monster. James Forrest is a mentality monster. Dyson Maeda is a mentality monster. These guys are new coming up. And it doesn't matter what you can actually say about his ability or that. Liam Scales is a mentality monster. That's why he's still in that side. Because Rodgers looks in that dressing room and goes, I can trust you to go out there and give that 100%. And that's where we are. That's where we are with players. And right at the pinnacle of that is Joe and Callum McGregor. Callum McGregor was fantastic on Saturday. And Joe's just a massive, massive presence on that pitch. Even, you might not see it if you're watching it on the telly. He's nearly at the halfway line talking to guys all the time. He never shuts up. He's telling players what to do at corner kicks. He's constantly talking. And he's just proved that he's up for it. He's absolutely up for it. So if we get over the line, I'm going to remember this is Joe Hart's title.
I think that's fair, Kev. And also, you're talking about that relationship that not only with the club, but with the fans and coming up to get the acclaim. That's part of this unity that I think has clicked into place, everything coming together. It's like that engagement. That's about the only way you can engage with players these days, right? And get a reaction from them.
And I think Hart has been that bridge.
Yeah,
I really do. Hart is the reason that we're all back on board, is because he's bought into it and he's brought the fans back into it. And we can see what it means to him.
When you go back to that St Johnstone game with the players and Brendan going up to the fans and some of the fans were booing. And you compare and contrast that. But you're right. It looks as though he has built a bridge. He's been a massive part of it. And I'm just at the stage now, Liam, right? Listen, you can go through the 7 years of episodes that we've had on a Celtic State of Mind. Kevin and I, way back in the day, at kitchen tables, at the toll booth. Where else did we record? Godwell Sound, all over the place, Kev. We were recording interviews up at the Hydro. And all we want at any single time during my Celtic supporting life is the best for Celtic. So we opened up talking about the media because of some of the bad headlines we've seen this week. Totally predictable. We're not doing it because we want clicks. You know, if we criticise any aspect of the football club, it's because sometimes there's a fear that if that doesn't get sorted out, we're not going to win the league. And I think that happened a lot during the pandemic, whereby certain members of the Acsom team, before I did, were saying, this isn't working, we need to change. And the minute you say it, there's a lot of Celtic fans say, wait a minute, that's the kind of thing mainstream media would say, sack the manager, sack the board, all this kind of stuff. We've heard sack the board this season. You know, we've heard the team and the manager getting booed this season. But where we are now is what we need to concentrate on. And that is what you're saying there earlier on, Liam. The coming together of us as fans, the positivity, the energy that we were talking about earlier on. And I feel pretty confident going into this game. But I'm going to bring this up for Chill Pill because I tend to agree. We should treat this game as a must-win. Now, I know a draw is not going to be a disaster, and as Liam quite rightly pointed out, even a defeat doesn't mean it's over. But see that momentum and all the rest of it, and it's been swinging, the pendulum's been swinging all season. I think that does give them a bit of momentum, Liam. So I think you approach that and you approach it with a win in mind. Now, this is something that I'm pretty sure we'll all be interested in. Derek Rourke, Songs for Saturday, welcome to the House of Fun. Derek, were you on the tunes at Dens Park against Rangers? That's what I want to know. Why does it always rain on me and all that kind of stuff, right?
If we win on Saturday, the first song over the PA, it should be played as A Little Respect by Erasure.
Oh, yes.
Oh, aye. Yes.
Brilliant. I wish we could play music on this show without getting done for copyright. I'd play it right now. Kieran, it's the big house now, the fun house. Keep an eye out for Pat Sharp and them twins. Listen, you had to be there to know what Kieran's talking about. That was the TV show I would have loved to have appeared on as a child.
That was filmed in Glasgow, was it not?
Was it? What about
I
Pat
think it was
Sharp's
the old
mullet?
STV studio, I believe. Aye.
Oh, I didn't realise that. I did not realise that. And Urban Culture is actually saying, let's get a vote on the 3 pre-match songs. I think John Lennon, Mind Games would need to be up there. Welcome to the House of Fun. And is it just called Respect or A Little Respect, Kev, by Erasure?
I think it's just called Respect. But
Respect.
I always want Celtic to play Welcome to the Jungle with Guns N' Roses, and that's been a big thing for me for ages. They've missed
I
a trick
remember you
here. They've
saying
not
that.
played that for years.
Yep, I remember you saying it years ago. Stephen, I agree with you. I think Forrest is way better on the right, but I'll tell you something. It shows just how adaptable he is that he's been putting some of these performances in, playing out on the left as well. Fun by the Beach Boys, Meltdown by AC/DC, Mind Games by John Lennon. Yes, Plunge McNugget, you're speaking my language. 3 tunes that need to be played if we win the game. Listen, it's just a bit of fun. We're allowed to do that. We're football fans, right? Chill pill, here we go. Willie Collum announced as the referee. Who is on VAR? Well, the full list, let me just bring up this full list. Eyesight's know what it used to be. The linesman is David McGeechy and Ross McLeod. The 4th official, Don Robertson. Stephen McLean is on VAR with Graham Stewart assisting him. And Peter Lamont comes in. Robertson is the 4th official on Saturday and ref for the Kilmarnock game. So he or Beaton will have been involved in all our games since Tynecastle. Saturday is the first game involving Rangers. Column has handled since they complained about him a year ago. That's true. Column, referee, what's your thoughts on that,
Liam? I would not have been happy whoever was refereeing the game, because I think every official at the top level in Scotland has shown some sort of glaring inadequacy at some point. I really think we need professional referees, we need professionally trained referees, and most importantly, we need professionally accountable referees. But we're not getting that. And to be honest, Willie Collum is the best of a bad lot, but that's a bit like saying syphilis is the best STD, to be quite honest. Sorry, being a bit graphic there, but I just wanted to put that. You're trying to emphasise the point as best I can.
That is what I would call an analogy that Kev Graham would have been proud of. There you go.
I wouldn't have went anywhere near both of them.
I would have preferred to stay away from them as well, Kev, but there you go. The point has been taken, Liam, and well made, I've got to say. Didn't he play Erasure, says Red Scotland.
Let's not read the rest of that comment.
No. Smell the glove. Yeah, you've got to be careful here when your eyesight's not great. Smell the glove. Thanks for the input anyway. Smell the glove says Funhouse was filmed at STV, and Mark says not, wasn't he? And that's the way that these comments go, right? People say yes, others say no. We're moving into the nitty gritty of this campaign, Kev. And I think what it shows, I mean, you and I, we've disagreed for 7 years on this show, Kev, about a number of things, but not because we don't like each other, I don't think. It's because we want what's best for Celtic, but you see it one way, I see it another. But I think what's important, we've got to stick to the kind of factual element at all times. So when we're talking about recruitment, going into the summer, I can say, well, it seems as though Brendan Rodgers, his mood, the way he's come across in the press conference, it seems as though he's changed as the season has developed. And he seems quite buoyant, and he seems a bit bold, and the confidence is flowing, Kev. And I'm thinking to myself, although there's not been any announcements regarding what's happening with the recruitment and the scouting for Celtic, because obviously there's 2 positions now available. Is that something you've managed to park? Are you parking that at the moment, Kev? You're going to come back to that in the pre-season? Because obviously there's a lot of work to be done.
I'm parking it now. I've got to park it now. It's quite funny. I'll go back to the Willie Collum bit for 10 seconds, right? They didn't get Willie Collum for a year. We complain about beating and get him the week after. Levels. We did not show the SFA who was boss a couple of weeks ago with Brendan Rodgers. Let's get that out of the way.
It could be conspiracy theories and said that we requested Willie Collum for this game.
That could well be, but who would request Willie
That
Collum?
was tongue-in-cheek, ladies and gentlemen.
I wouldn't send Willie Collum down the street to get me a bottle of Iron Brew. He would definitely come back with a bottle of Cherry Aid.
Did you see George Cadet on Iron Brew last night on an interview? Did you watch that?
Aye, that's another thing. Look, see these folk that get on to Van Hooijdonk and Cadet about what they left the club, blah, 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 and never killed your cat. They're professional football players. They left for more money because they were lied to by the club. That's it. Get over it. Enjoy what they gave us.
And
Because
there's
they
two
gave us
sides
some
of the
great
story,
moments.
Kev. There's two sides of the story, and what we gave last night was Pierre's and Cadet's side of the story. That's it, really.
These guys done something. I've had some great moments watching Van Hooijdonk. Absolutely brilliant moments. I've had some great moments watching
First season ticket, Kev, when Van Hooijdonk signed.
Look, fit was a business, unfortunately. That's it. But what was the question? Where was I going with the question? Brendan Rodgers, right? There has been a lot of Celtic this season I've found very, very difficult to love. Very, very difficult. There's a whole list. The boring football, Rodgers' attitude at the start of the season, the falling out with the Green Brigade. There's the fact that the Leela Bada stuff when we were absolutely called out and nobody for the club backed up the support. There's a whole load of rubbish that we need to pick out at the end of this season. A whole load of rubbish. And this Celtic team have been really, really difficult to love. Really difficult to love this season, performance-wise. Results-wise, it's been really quite turgid at times. But the bottom line is, we won on Saturday, we won the league, and that's it. That's the only focus that I've got at this precise moment in time. I'll park everything else. I'll love that team to death at the final whistle on Saturday if we've won. Then I can moan all I want for the 3 months during the summer.
The thing is, Kev, I see it almost like an unruly child. You always love it, but they can frustrate you at times. They can get you angry at times. And that's because football, for me, I don't know what it's like to support another team, but the emotional investment, Liam, you're over in Japan. You watch the games with your old man who lives in Scotland. And it's a connection that you've got to your old fellow who lives on the other side of the world. Celtic brings you together once or twice a week. The emotional investment you've got in the football club is incredible. You always love them even when things aren't going so well. You get frustrated at certain things. And I think what I'm getting at here is what Kevin says is right. There's been a lot of kind of topsy-turvy moments this season. And some of them you feel were avoidable. Some of them are probably not the way we thought they were as well, though, Liam, because you've got this idea in your mind, what's happening behind the scenes. We don't really know what's happening behind the scenes, do we?
No, I mean, you think about you talk about the emotional aspect, right? My wife and I have arguments now and again. Doesn't mean that I love her any less, right? And I think that a lot of the criticism that we as a show and also fan media in general aim at Celtic is because we want them to be better and we know they can be better. And I think it's also important to note that, again, this is more of a journalistic thing from my background, but blind loyalty to anything, a team, a political party, a religion, blind loyalty to anything never ends well. That's historically proven. And, we don't need to look too far across Glasgow to see what happens when blind loyalty takes over, when pragmatism is what was required. It leads to liquidation, leads to bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
If we had not been critical of the club back in '94, perhaps we wouldn't be here now. And I think that I'm glad that we are where we are now, in pole position. It's not done yet, but we're in pole position to win this league. And we certainly weren't there a few months ago. And I take back nothing that I said then, because what I said at the time, I believe, was valid criticism.
No.
Yeah. It's of its time, it's of its moment. I gave a list at the beginning of the season of 10 players that I think should leave Celtic, and on that list was Liam Scales. And Liam Scales has had what could be described as a breakthrough season, a redemption arc, all these different things we've heard. If you were to give your top 3 players this season, it's Liam Scales part of the discussion. Top 3, if you were to list them, I would say so. I think he's up there, right? And I know that he divides opinion. And he divides opinion because the people that moan about Liam Scales want Celtic to do better. That's all it is, Kev. That's all it comes down to. But what I would say in terms of the recruitment, which we've talked about time and time again this season in relation to Brendan Rodgers coming into the club, there's been a lot said on this show. And what I would say is we don't actually know a lot of what's happening behind the scenes. And it's easy to say, Mark Lobel's surname's Lobel. Let's jump on this have a dig at the Lowells kind of thing. And I'm no longer interested in any of that, because I think what we need to do is we need to come together as a fan base, and I think we're doing that. And I think it's all about just parking anything, Kev, to the side, come back to it in the summer. But when it comes to the recruitment and the head of recruitment, what the guys are doing is they are identifying players. They're identifying players. They're not the people that are saying, listen, we're giving them 4 or 5 year deals. That's not their remit. They're identifying football players through the head of scouting, the head of recruitment. They're presented to the manager. We were in a transition between Ange and Brendan. Some players were probably too far down the line for Brendan to say no. And that has come to fruition throughout the season. But Matt Lowell's left the club of his own volition. He wasn't sacked. He has left his position. And I think now what we have to focus on is, if someone else comes in, is it someone that Brendan's going to work well with? Well, it needs to be, because obviously Mark Lowell worked really, really well with Ange and recommended him for the role. And we need to find somebody who works really, really well with Brendan Rodgers. And I don't want to go down the road of saying it's all about nepotism and favouritism. Whoever's getting that job, I just want them to be able to do it. And then we go from a position of strength, hopefully at the end of the season, and we move on for European progression and do better than we did last year. Kev, people are asking about your Brendometer. Are you going to leave that until next week?
I'm going to leave that to the end of the season. I need to leave that to the end of the season. I'm a bit like Liam. I'm not going to take back anything that I says. I says a couple of months ago that if he loses this league, then I don't think there's any way back for him. And I still believe that, because of the advantages that we've had. The football has been rubbish. The football has been utterly dreadful. But if he gets us over the line, then he's probably got enough credit in the bank to go, right, we'll give you a summer. But has he got enough credit in the bank to last a bad start the next season? I don't know, with the match going support. But the match going support, the guys that I go with, the guys that I spoke to on Saturday, the boys that I've spoke to at the away games and all of that, we just want to get this over the line now, and we'll have the recriminations in the summer.
We'll have those discussions in the summer.
Aye,
Can I just clarify something, Kev? Rodney McDonald's bringing up me switching you off once.
No,
you're an admin on this page. You can come and go as you please. In fact, you could have switched me off if you wanted.
No. I ken what he's on about, and I did ask you to take me off. That's when I was absolutely ravaged with COVID.
Can I ask though? Was that no the Rangers game 1-0? Angie's
Yes.
first derby. It was, wasn't it? Aye.
Yes.
The Rangers game. We've come on since then. Bradley 8U. My girlfriend is sick to death of me talking about Celtic. Don't think she fully gets it.
Well, seemingly Philip comment Clermont or the Belgian. I don't believe Belgians exist, by the way. I've told you this before. I went to Belgium to watch Celtic against Anderlecht and never met a Belgian the whole 4 days I was there. Never met one. But do you know Ken, that Voldemort actually divorced his first wife because she didn't get football? And he says that in an opening interview when he was a Rangers manager. And not one of the press went like that. What are you on about?
Hey, who signed him for Coventry City as a player?
Oh, it's wee Strachan, eh?
Wee
You
Strachan,
see Gordon
yes.
Strachan's interviewing Tim Booth?
No.
He's WG3.
No.
Aye. Tim Booth's got a book out, and Gordon Strachan's interviewing him. A question and answer, Gordon Strachan and Tim Booth.
That is sensational. I'll need to go to that. Absolutely. Listen, we need to wish a few people a happy birthday from the world of Celtic today. And I'm just going to shout it out there. The first one is Jack Hendry. You're talking about Belgians not existing. Well, he went to Belgium, didn't he? Made us a few quid. What age do you think Jack Hendry is, Kev? Today?
27, 28.
29. And sharing a birthday with Hendry is a smile of sorrow. What age do you think he is, Liam?
26.
26 on the nose. Two players. The first one, Jack Hendry, played 27 games. That's all he played for Celtic. And Sorrow, 43 games. There you go. And when Jack Hendry was born, Kev, who do you think was number 2 in the charts?
30 years ago. Then again.
29.
29 years ago. Don't know. Blur.
The other one,
Oasis.
Yes.
Paul's
Yes.
got off
And
there.
but you got there. You got for joining us, 2,000 strong, absolutely tremendous session, and we will see you tomorrow on a Celtic